When Claire Bennet opened her door to a stranger one rainy afternoon, she thought she was simply offering shelter from the storm. What she didn't realize was that this single act of kindness would change her quiet life forever. For years, Claire had lived alone in a stone house on the edge of a small town, where silence pressed in like a constant shadow. But everything shifted the day she found a young man sitting on her garden wall, tired, hungry, and with nowhere to go. His name was Daniel, and the moment she invited him inside, a story began that neither of them could have predicted. Because behind Daniel's polite smile was a struggle he tried desperately to hide. And behind Claire's steady kindness was a loneliness she had long since accepted. Together, their lives were about to collide in ways that would test their strength, uncover hidden truths, and reveal how a simple open door can lead to something much greater than either of them imagined. Claire's house had always been quiet. Too quiet. Ever since her husband's passing, the rooms felt more like empty shells than a home. She filled her days with books, tea, and tending to her small garden, but at night the silence seemed to grow louder, a constant reminder that she was alone. It was on one of those gray afternoons, with rain tapping gently against the windows, that Claire noticed him. A young man, no older than his early 20s, sat on the garden wall outside her gate. His clothes were damp, his shoulders slumped under the weight of exhaustion. He looked like someone carrying far more than just a heavy satchel. Claire hesitated at first. In her small town, strangers were rare, and this one seemed out of place. But something about his expression, tired, polite, yet quietly desperate, tugged at her. She stepped outside with an umbrella in hand. "Are you lost?" she asked softly. The young man looked up, startled, and managed a weary smile. "My name's Daniel," he said. I don't really have anywhere to go tonight." For a moment, Claire stood still. Letting a stranger into her home was not something she had ever imagined doing. But as the rain poured harder, and Daniel's shiver became more visible, her heart overruled her hesitation. "You can stay in the spare room," she offered. His eyes widened, relief washing over his face. He thanked her again and again, as if the smallest kindness was more than he had expected from the world. Claire didn't know it yet, but this small decision, to open her door to a stranger, would begin a chain of events that neither of them could have predicted. The first night passed quietly. Claire showed Daniel to the guest room, gave him a warm blanket, and left him to rest. She half expected him to disappear by morning, but when she came down for breakfast, he was there, sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded neatly, waiting for her permission before touching the food. He barely spoke, yet his manners were impossible to ignore. He offered to wash the dishes, sweep the floor, even help in the garden. Claire noticed how careful he was, never imposing, never demanding, as if he was afraid of being a burden. At first, they communicated mostly through actions. Daniel would fix the squeaky hinge on a door without being asked, and Claire would leave an extra slice of pie on the table for him without a word. It was as if they had created their own language of unspoken gratitude. Still, curiosity lingered in Claire's mind. Who was this young man? Why was he alone? Whenever she asked about his past, Daniel would smile faintly and change the subject, hiding his pain behind polite silence. But she could sense it. The way his eyes darkened when he stared into the distance told her he was running from something, or perhaps someone. Despite the mystery, Claire felt her loneliness easing. For the first time in years, there was laughter in the house, even if it was just a chuckle at Daniel's clumsy attempt at baking bread or the way he teased her about her endless stack of novels. Yet, just as Claire was beginning to believe fate had sent her a companion, strange little signs began to surface, hints that Daniel's presence wasn't as simple as it seemed. It began with small things. One evening, while setting the table, Claire noticed the faded scars along Daniel's wrist. He quickly pulled his sleeve down, pretending she hadn't seen. Another time, she found him standing at the window late at night, staring into the darkness as though he expected someone to be out there watching. The most unsettling moment came when she offered him an old jacket that had belonged to her late husband. Daniel accepted it gratefully, but when his fingers brushed over the initials stitched on the inside pocket, his face went pale, as if the sight of them triggered a memory he didn't want to relive. Claire's curiosity grew stronger, but every time she tried to gently ask about his past, Daniel's smile tightened, and he deflected with a joke or an unnecessary chore. It wasn't the silence of someone shy, it was the silence of someone hiding. And then came the letters. While tidying up one afternoon, Claire discovered a few folded envelopes at the bottom of Daniel's satchel. They had no names on them, no return address, only hurried words scribbled inside, words that spoke of regret, of betrayal, and of a promise to make things right. Her hands trembled as she placed them back exactly where she found them. Whatever Daniel was running from, it wasn't ordinary. And Claire realized with a chill that by letting him into her home, she had unknowingly stepped into his hidden world. But instead of fear, something else stirred inside her, a determination to uncover the truth. The mystery could no longer be ignored. Claire told herself she was only being cautious, but the truth was she was deeply invested now. Daniel wasn't just a stranger anymore, he was part of her daily life, and the fear of losing that comfort mixed with the need to understand who he really was. One evening, while Daniel was out running an errand, Claire found herself wandering into the guest room. It was tidy, almost unnaturally so, but something caught her eye, a worn leather notebook hidden beneath the pillow. She hesitated, heart racing, before opening it. The pages weren't filled with casual thoughts or poetry. Instead, they were fragments of confessions, sentences scrawled in haste, sometimes scratched out entirely. Words like forgive, it wasn't supposed to happen, and I can't go back. When Daniel returned, Claire tried to act normal, but she couldn't ignore the way he looked at her, sharp, searching, as if he knew she had crossed into his private world. That night, their usual quiet dinner was heavy with unspoken tension. Then came the slip. As they talked about simple things, Daniel mentioned a town miles away, one Claire hadn't brought up. His voice faltered when he realized, and for the first time, his calm mask cracked. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his glass of water, and Claire noticed. The next morning, a knock at the door shattered the fragile peace. Two men in dark coats stood outside, asking if she had seen someone matching Daniel's description. Claire's heart pounded, but instinct told her to lie. She said no. The men left, but their warning lingered in the air like smoke. If you do see him, tell us. For your own sake. Claire closed the door, her hands shaking. She turned to find Daniel standing silently at the top of the stairs, his face pale, his secret now undeniable. That night, the house was wrapped in silence, but it wasn't the comfortable silence Claire had grown used to. This time, it was heavy, suffocating, filled with everything Daniel hadn't said. Finally, he spoke. His voice was low, almost trembling. I never meant to bring trouble to your door. Claire set down her teacup, her eyes fixed on him. Then tell me the truth, Daniel. Please. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, with a shaky breath, he began. He told her about the town he had left behind, a place where trust had been broken, where he had been caught in the middle of something far larger than himself. He had worked for a man who promised him opportunity, but what he found was corruption, deceit, and betrayal. When Daniel realized the truth and tried to walk away, things spiraled out of control. There were mistakes, he admitted, his gaze fixed on the floor. I tried to fix them, but instead I made enemies. And now they won't stop until they find me. Claire's chest tightened. She wanted to ask more, what mistakes? What exactly had he done? But the fear in his eyes stopped her. He was holding back details, pieces of the puzzle he wasn't ready to give away. Still, for the first time, he let her see the weight he carried. And Claire, instead of turning him away, felt something unexpected, compassion. You're not alone anymore, she whispered. But even as the words left her lips, a part of her knew the danger was far from over. Daniel's past wasn't finished with him, and now, it wasn't finished with her either. The days that followed were tense. Daniel tried to go about life as if nothing had changed, repairing a loose step on the porch, carrying groceries, reading in the quiet of the evenings. But Claire noticed the way his eyes darted toward the window whenever a car passed, or how his shoulders stiffened at the sound of footsteps outside. Then it happened. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Claire spotted a dark sedan parked across the street. It wasn't a neighbor's car. And it didn't leave. When she pointed it out, Daniel's face drained of color. "They've found me," he whispered. That night, sleep was impossible. Claire lay awake listening to every creak of the house, every rustle of the trees outside. Daniel sat by the window, jaw tight, as though expecting the door to burst open at any moment. By morning, the car was gone, but the threat lingered, thick and suffocating. Claire realized then that she was standing at a crossroads. She could turn Daniel over, protect herself, and return to her quiet, lonely life. Or she could stand by him, risk everything, and face whatever storm was coming. Her heart knew the answer before her mind could protest. She had already chosen him the night she opened her door. But the storm was closer than either of them imagined. The knock came just after midnight. It wasn't polite or hesitant, it was loud, sharp, the kind of knock that demanded obedience. Claire froze in the hallway, her heart hammering in her chest. Daniel, pale but steady, motioned for her to stay back. When he opened the door, two men stood there, the same ones she had seen days before. Their voices were calm, but their words were edged with threat. "Enough running, Daniel. You know why we're here." Claire could see it in his eyes, the fear, yes, but also the exhaustion. He was tired of running. The men pushed their way inside, and the truth spilled out in fragments as the confrontation unfolded. Daniel's mistakes were no longer vague shadows, he had uncovered dangerous secrets about the people he once worked for. Money laundering, betrayals, lives ruined in silence. And when he tried to expose them, he became their target. Claire stood trembling, torn between disbelief and the overwhelming need to protect him. "You can't just take him," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. The men smirked, as if she was irrelevant. But Daniel stepped forward. "This ends tonight," he said. "No more hiding." For a moment, everything hung in balance, the rain outside pounding like a drum, the men's cold stares, Daniel's quiet resolve. Claire realized she was witnessing the final chapter of his running. But how it would end, she didn't yet know. What happened that night would remain etched in Claire's memory forever. The men didn't get what they came for. Daniel, with Claire by his side, refused to surrender. And though the details of how it ended blurred in fear and adrenaline, one truth became clear: Claire was no longer the lonely widow who once lived in silence. By opening her door to a stranger, she had opened her heart to risk, danger, and pain, but also to courage, connection, and a kind of purpose she never thought she'd feel again. Daniel's past didn't vanish overnight. Shadow still lingered, and trust was still fragile. Yet together, they carried a strength neither had alone. And perhaps that's the hidden truth in all of this: sometimes, the people who seem to stumble into our lives by accident are the ones we were meant to meet all along, not to complete our story, but to change the way it's written. Because in the end, Claire realized something she had never dared to believe. She wasn't saving Daniel. They were saving each other.